Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, we're keeping the World War One. I guess you could say, German military theme going, but of course, this is a little different because World War One gas warfare was a bipartisan venture. You can see, I remember as a kid when I saw this photo, this freaked me out. I was like, all these guys are blind, right? And I like how they're just like, yeah, just grab the guy next to you, grab his shoulder, and keep going down. It's like luckily, this was only temporary. I was like, geez, this is mustard gas. Of course, the famous mustard gas. A non lethal gas, which was actually really effective, unlike the more lethal gases that were used. Now, of course, the Osprey here, a lot of great artwork. Now, you can say right off the bat, what I was deciding when I was going to do this video, what I think of the Germans in World War One were the first ones to use the chemical weapons. Do I think they should have done that? Will I be critical of my blood for having initiated this? Rather, I mean, to be honest, in terms of industrial warfare, you don't get more industrial than like friggin' releasing poison gas on people. You have precedents in history of germ warfare, even though they didn't know it was germs, but they knew, plague, bodies ridden with the plague, spread it, all that. What do I feel? Do I feel that this was a good thing? Obviously, no, I don't. I don't think. Part of me is that they should not have done this. Okay, from a moral standpoint, or even as you can see in the end, gas was not. It was more effective in the defensive. Okay, not as much in the offensive. This thing could turn on you, and eventually an arms race built up between the powers. Okay, well, the whole idea was to try to, as the respirators were improved, how to overwhelm them with greater concentrations of the various chemicals involved. Uh, if I actually look at this value-free, value-free analysis as academic agents. What difference does it make whether you blow a guy up or you burn him, or if you shoot him full of lead or blow him to bits? What's the difference between that and releasing gas on him? Okay, one of the issues though with gas is that it's a double-edged sword. Okay, a lot of the attackers would use it and their own troops would get hit with it, and as they started developing the different chemicals, things got really dicey, especially particular chemicals that wouldn't even immediately work. You wouldn't even realize you were contaminated with it. But let's get into the book here. Remember, this is exactly like in that movie I did, Starstruck in 1917. You see these Bavarians, these Nordicized Alpinoids. Don't diss my people like that. And these poor bastards probably in this thing for like weeks, getting bombed and then getting the order to go out. So, of course, I would be the guy. Well, back then, I would have a bitchin' mustache, I think. But, yeah, it's like, you have a mustache. Schnurrbart. Anyway, so obviously apparently they thought of this, because everybody knew, World War One just popped off. Listen, even in school, even in public school, the New York public school system, we knew that, we were taught that, the things in World War One were building up for many decades, as usual in history. Chemical warfare was outlawed at The Hague. Oh, The Hague. Hague's across from the kebab stand. I like this too. They actually were in Britain, right? The whole thing is, morally the Germans used this first. Everybody was really quick though to get their gas into the field. So obviously, they were thinking about. Everyone was itching to probably use this as a weapon. And the Germans just did it first, obviously, since they were, outnumbered, trying to break the trenches like this. They had identified an effective tear gas. Of course, tear gas, right? They were inconclusive evidence. So basically, a boy was offered a shilling to enter the trench. Can you imagine this poor boy? Hey, lad, come here. You want a shilling? Oh, yeah, I will. All right. Yeah, go in this trench. And you see that throughout, actually. So, obviously, look at all the different grenades they have. So, they start the tear gas, but eventually, the Germans are like, F this, we're going to use chlorine gas on Pioneer, right? Gas Pioneer Unit. I love the Germans. Pioneer Kommando Disinfectionsstop Peterson. That's right. We're gonna get you limeys, and you Frenchies. You know. Now, of course, Yeeper, right? Yeah, you have to. That's how it's pronounced, Yeeper. Though I know everyone's like, oh God, this low life reading these very scholastic, academic books. Sue me. So basically, at 5 p.m. on the afternoon of April 22nd, 1915, loud hissing jets of chlorine emerged from clouds in front of the German trenches towards the French lines. Yeah, this is pretty bad, man. I mean, this is like, to die like this. Of course, chlorine essentially would turn your breathing. You'd have it bloody, right? The deadly poison. You'd basically drown inside your lungs, right? The victims would drown as your lungs would flood with fluid because of the irritation of the lungs. The fluid was actually created as the natural human response to this, but it would be so much that you would drown. Okay, you have the blue thing, right? You'd have the blue tinge as you are starved of oxygen. So now you see the early gas masks are essentially, they even say like get some cotton, get some water on it, get some alkaline solution on it or whatever, or even just water, and just put it over your damn face. An alkaline solution, so such as urine. You're gonna what? You're gonna see what that means. So now the Germans carried out these attacks. Now they did some damage. Look, I like this one here. The first one they came the black veiling respirator. Respirator, dude, that's just like cotton, and but still it did save hundreds of lives. Okay. Of course, eventually it would not use. And I like this here. Like it's the Daily Mail. They had those Daily Mail suckers back then. So they were appealing to the public to make like respirators for the lads. So you see different masks. Of course, the French had one where you had to put it together, and then eventually the British had the mask of what you think of, like how like very horror like. The British retaliate. I like this one here. You gotta, what is this? You gotta hold it in the teeth. I ain't sticking that in my mouth, son. Are you nuts? And of course you get other gas. You get phosgene. This is a big one. So of course the Germans had. The Germans had a better mask. I know you're surprised. Jaeger and infantry. They had what's this? A gummy mask, like gummy bears. What is a gummy bear? Rubber mask. So really, gummy bears are rubber bears. And of course, you see all the calamity. The original gas attacks are literally from like these canisters, just releasing them. Of course, these things leak, and depending on the weather, depending on anything, lots of troops were running into their own gas. And no matter how much you were trained, when you panic, things didn't always work out. Right, the Germans had a removable filter. You could replace them, but also change the contents. Right, you didn't have to get rid of the whole mask. You could change the different filters for the different kinds of gas you were facing. Very, very smart. I like the French one. The French is called the tampon. They're putting tampons on their face. I know I'm making a joke about something that the trauma of stuff like this is just inconceivable. Right, phosgene is 10 times more toxic than chlorine. Oh man, I like this too. And of course you get to see the great human rights of the British. An Unteroffizier was captured, questioned by an intelligence officer, Leslie Barley, now chemical advisor to the Second Army. When he refused to talk, they locked him handcuffed overnight in the freezing roof space of the town hall. Okay, and at next 5 a.m. he duly revealed the time and location of the attack. Oh, okay. So it's okay. So we're fair game now, right? Whatever, you do whatever you want. You lose, you're the criminal. Remember that. And once they had respirators that could deal with phosgene, the Germans just attempted to exhaust the respirators by increasing the concentration. So you have this arms race that really continued. I mean, they were doing gas attacks into the last days of the war. There's a British thing here. What is it? They come up with a very effective one here to release gas. So anyway, you got gas shells. Right? You see, talk about you're getting inhuman. I don't know if anyone remembers, there's that film. Lovecraft liked that film. I forgot. It was a guy who went back in time. I forgot what the film was called. He went back in time, and there was a scene where, like, a woman from the 18th century that he's in love with, they touch each other, and she sees what he sees, and he's from the early 20th century, and she sees basically a war scene of gas masked men in no man's land, and she freaks the fuck out, and she collapses. She sees horror. She says, "I saw horror." It was an interesting scene, and of course you get the early. Look at this. What is that? Oh, don't do that. No, we'll get against that. You get the British gas attack. The great painted art. And this is what I'm talking about. The French, right? They gotta put tampons on their face. Gas attack. Right, activated. You had to pee on it. What if you didn't have to pee? And this anyway. Jeez, I guess save your pee. The great artwork, of course. But you see, no matter what, the stuff will always get through at some point. I mean, you have the different masks here. German anti-gas. The fucking animals. These poor animals. They don't know what the fuck is. They don't know what's going on, dude. So they don't know. They have too much sense to do that. So, all right, so we're going here. But they kept looking for greater long air tanks. Dr. Lammel and Professor Steinkopf. Insufficiently toxic. Right, this is mustard gas. It was the most effective of all the gases. Ironically, the most effective gas was the non-lethal one. All right. Now, what's interesting, too, is when you read about the chemical engineers in the military that come up with this, give them a lot of credit. These weren't just eggheads playing games with the lives of soldiers. Many of these men exposed themselves to these gases, okay? And a lot of them suffered permanent damage to their lungs from it. So they walked the walk. They talked the talk, and they walked the walk. So going through get ready, right? Bavarian soldiers of the Landsturm Infanterie Bataillon Würzburg. Wow. Just like, And yeah, this one here. At least this was temporary, but can you imagine being one of these guys not knowing that? Of course, something like this similar happened to a certain famous leader later that we know of. Okay. That's why I like this. French measures. They would attach a pharmacist. So imagine you're a pharmacist, you get drafted into the army, and now your job is to include anti-gas measures, and not only to the gas, but also how to clean the gas that would get into the clothes, right? These special clothes, they come up with all kinds of crazy decontamination methods, these pharmacists, right? So, anyway, we're getting to here, of course, the Kaiser War, the last offensive of the Germans. And they're still using gas, right? Here we go. One of the attacks in Flanders, right? They were so heavily bombarded, the gutters ran with the liquid. My God. So, look, the Germans, of course, very practical. They added purple and red dye to their mustard shells to enable their troops to recognize contaminated shell craters. A lot of guys wouldn't see this stuff. They'd run in. Nothing would happen right away, and then they would get hit with a delayed reaction that in some way was even worse. Anyway, of course, the Livens projector, right? That was the thing that they invented to release the gas. Anyway, horrific. The Germans shouldn't have started this, but it doesn't matter. It made sense. They needed to do whatever they could to try to break this stuff, and everybody was ready to do it themselves, so they were just waiting. So I like this. All right, and the guy Edward Harrison, the genius behind the smallpox respirator, died of pneumonia November 14th, 1918, of overwork and gas inhalation. I'm sure the influenza didn't help. Now this is as a side note to end this. They call it Britain, right? The Great British, the rights of Englishmen, right? The human rights come from this. They actually did experiments of certain gas. This other cyanide gas, or what is this? No, arsenic. Of course, intense pains and sinuses also create temporary bouts of extreme feelings of psychological misery. Such was the intensity of these symptoms that human guinea pigs at Porton had to be prevented from killing themselves. Oof, you didn't hear about that, did you? Anyway. It would be a good idea for a horror film, wouldn't it? Historical horror film. So, and what is this? Now you gotta check careful. Professor Hitz Haber of Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, the scientist behind the German chemical warfare program, Got the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 1918 for his pre-work on the synthesis of ammonia. What is this? Oh, okay. Enough said. What a fucking nightmare.